When we do rhinoscopy in cats, usually we'll do, first of all, we'll start with retroflex nasopharyngoscopy. And we'll typically use quite a small diameter bronchoscope for this. You can, I suppose, technically use a pediatric gastroscope, but the problem is that even the pediatric ones, it's the curve of the actual endoscope itself, the deflecting tip, that's going to be your limiting factor because they have sometimes quite a high arc, so you're not going to get over and up over the soft palate. So that's why a bronchoscope's better, because the bending angle arc is a lot less, less wide, if you will. We typically will use anything less than 5 millimeters in diameter. And what I typically do is you'll read in various textbooks and things that people will pre-hook, pre-J-hook, and then put it in the mouth and try to put it, hook it up over the soft palate. And I find that's really unrewarding in cats because they've got quite an acute reverse sneeze reflex. No matter what depth of anesthesia, they tend to do this reverse sneeze and try to cough that out. And you're in there trying to get it in there and causing more damage, and then it starts to bleed. So what I tend to do is I guide the endoscope, and on the monitor you can see once you reach the edge of the soft palate, then you want to downward deflect on your bronchoscope and it will fling the tip right over the soft palate. So I'm going to show you this bronchoscope here. So this is how many people have a bronchoscope in their practice? So you're familiar with the anatomy of it? I'll go through it just in case if people are shy. Tell me if I'm being too basic. But a bronchoscope is different than a gastroscope, and that's quite important to understand. A bronchoscope has a two-way lever system. So when you press down on the lever, it gives you the up deflection, and when you press up on the lever, you get the downward deflection. Notice you don't have left and right. In order to get left and right, you have to rotate the endoscope left and right. Okay? With gastroscopes, for instance, you've got two wheels, one larger wheel, one smaller wheel on the outside, and that gives you your four-way tip deflection. So in order to get those, as I said, you need to rotate your arm left and right. This does not have any way of providing insufflation or actual active suction like a gastroscope does, so you can't use this for. Despite it being small, people think, well, this is small, this is cat, therefore I can use this for looking in the stomach. You can't do that because this has no way of insufflating viscous structures. So you can't do that. Obviously you got your eyepiece, and that's where your camera head can attach onto, and we'll do that down in the lab so you can see that, and that projects the image onto the monitor. And then you've got your light guide cable post, that's where your light guide cable attaches. You've got a biopsy channel here that could be used for instrumentation, but also you can use this as a cold sterilized unit or even ethylene oxide. You can then use that directly for BALs if you're doing bronchoalveolar lavages for lower respiratory endoscopy. So that's the difference between a bronchoscope and a gastroscope in veterinary medicine. Does that make sense so far? Good. So when this is intended to be held in the left hand, and I typically will do a three-hand hold, or a three-finger hold with my thumb on the lever. When you're in the cat, for instance, you'll notice that sometimes to get that subtle movement, so you might be up against a structure in the back of the oral pharynx, sometimes just doing subtle movements with your thumb, it's not wide movements, will give you that navigation. You don't want to be twisting this back and forth because you've got fragile fibers in here and you're going to shatter everything in there. So it's all about longitudinal movements and not putting pressure on the insertion tube. So when I go and put this in the mouth, I look for the edge of the soft palate. Once I see the edge of the soft palate, I sneak up to the cat and I push this downward really quickly, and it flings it up over the soft palate. And that basically beats that reverse sneeze reflex, and you get that image really quickly. So looking at the nasopharynx should take no longer than 5-10 seconds. And I'll show that in the video in just a minute.
You still can't take samples because of the...
You can. I find them very unrewarding though. And if you are taking samples, you need to be very careful to feed the biopsy forceps when the whole entire insertion tube's straight. until you see the ends at the very end of the insertion tube. If you feed biopsy forceps through a pre-flexed endoscope, you're going to puncture the channel, and that's going to be irreversible damage. You've probably shot 10,000 pounds down the drain just by doing that. So I don't find them very useful, so I don't really do retroflex biopsies. I usually go rostrally and get my samples that way.